So what's new with you guys? How's it going?
It's going.
Yeah,
Same old, same old.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, good. You got the books, Michelle. That's good. So yeah, hopefully there's some resources in there and it'll at least point us in the direction we need to go. And certainly it appears one of those things is to get kind of an adult's, level language for the habits of mind if we're going to continue to ask people to develop those kinds of outcomes. And the math people worked on their program review and they've got 3 outcomes for 105 and 140, and they've got the CLOs aligned to the PLOs, aligned to the ILOs. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting, Michelle, a lot of interesting things in those books. There's been a lot done. I don't know how active that whole movement is because I haven't seen a lot of literature since like 2009. But I think I did mention to you guys that I've driven by middle schools and seen the habits of mind painted on the wall of the recess area. So there's things, there's work going on out there. I just don't know, what's happening recently. Hey, Adam, how are you?
Hello and good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday.
Yes. And the meeting's being recorded, just so you know, so that Andrea can watch it because she's taking her mom to the doctors today.
Okay. Excellent. Nice. Hey, so I did want to point out that I am feeling much better than I was our last meeting. I ended up getting even more sick and having like a fever on Friday and just like chills in bed the whole day. But I feel much better. So okay. I was kind of foggy minded. So excuse my my presence of or lack thereof of the last meeting.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, and it's not any COVID stuff or anything. It was just kind of a cold or the flu or something.
No, yeah. So we had all kind of gotten sick, except for my wife, of course. She's got an immune system as strong as iron, right? But my boys had like the snivels and and whatnot, and I was like the only one that it kind of like hit hard. Okay. And so but yeah, so like we were around my family members, and because we had gotten a cabin up in Big Bear. And my family members had ended up getting, because quite a few of us had gotten a cold, and they all got tested for COVID, and it was all negative. So I was like, okay, well, it's just it's a cold. So, but yeah, it's not like we were, mingling with the crowds and stuff like that. But still, I know people come together and can still get COVID that way. But no, yeah, I feel good. Yeah, I wasn't. So whatever. Anyways,
good. Yes. No, that's good.
So.
I signed up for the vaccine. I'm going down today to the health center at San Jacinto just to see, because I just thought it'd be, I don't know how popular it is or how many people are getting vaccinated or how big a demand there is, but I'm kind of thinking, I'm turning 60 next month, so I'm thinking I better do it sooner than later. And so I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. I had a student that got her second dose. I believe it was yesterday. And she's an older student, and she was like this. And this week we have our first exam, and she's like, of course I give them the review and they can work and whatnot together. And she's like, oh my God, I have like, foggy brain or whatever. So
I heard that the recuperation after the second shot's a little tougher. So yeah, I mean, I'm anticipating that. So.
Yeah, I got the first shot last week.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, San Jacinto also. And first day I felt fine. Second day, I felt a little bit drowsy.
Right.
And my arm, where I got it, the first day I was moving my arm. The second day, like just lifting it a little bit. It was like sore the whole day.
Yeah.
And people have told me about the arm. Like it's like, expect your arm to be sore. And I was like, yep. That sounds about right, what people were saying. So,
okay, that's good to know.
That it was good.
I've had that with like a flu shot and a tetanus shot, the sore arm kind of stuff, and so hopefully it won't be worse than what I've experienced already. But let me bring you guys up to speed kind of where we are, because after talking to you guys the last time and talking about how trying to work with your departments, and then, you know, the time's now passed since they watched the Transforming Lives videos, and you've had those discussions in the department and worked on CLOs and PLOs, that there's more of a need to do a deeper dive into goals, objectives, outcomes, that kind of stuff, just because we're really weak on that, no matter whether we're trying to write a rap or we're trying to participate in a strategic planning effort, or we're, you know, in curriculum doing learning objectives and our learning outcomes. That this is an area that's, you know, pretty technical. And when you get on the internet and do a search for like you know, outcomes or objectives or anything, in the first 5 to 10 websites, you'll get one website that's for professional development, like you're training your workers, and they'll say, oh yeah, you got to have objectives and you have to have different outcomes. Then you'll hit a learning site that says, well, you've already got your course objectives, so we'll just use those as the outcomes. And so, you know, it doesn't take long before there's confusion. You know, is an outcome the same as an objective? Well, yeah, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And so where do they, you know, what's their function? What do they need to really do? And I hadn't planned to do this, but it was really good. I usually just write written instructions for the RAP. That's our resource allocation proposal. And once you finish program review, right, if you need more money than your department budget allows, and you need technology or facilities remodels or whatever, then you write a RAP. And the first 3 sections aren't so bad, because you say, well, here's, you know, how it's going to help equity, and here's how it's in my program review, and then here's how it connects to our strategic plan, our strategic equity planning goals now, and here's how it fits with our facilities plan or our staffing plan. And then you hit section 4, and right, it's almost like people have taught you how to go on a backpacking trip, and right, you're comfortable backpacking in the summer, and now we're going to go climb Mount Everest. Right. And so now there's ropes, and now there's danger, and now there's like a big, huge expedition, and now you're part of some big effort, because in section 4, you have to write goals and outcomes. Right. And so instead of trying to support you gather support and connection to the district's activities for your proposal, now you have to pretend like, okay, it's a year or 2 in the future. How are we going to measure this, right? So we've gotten the money, we're doing what the money's for, but how do we know if it's working and how well it's working, right? And so again, we're back to this outcome objective goal thing, and people just aren't comfortable with it. So I've talked to like the squat teachers like Baha Ray and Rhonda Nishimoto and Del Helms, and they're like, yeah, the faculty have a real struggle like tying their objectives to their assessments, right? And how they're going to really know that what they're teaching and their learning objectives, the students are really learning. And so they go into Canvas and try to create rubrics and do things like that. So it's just a hard thing all the way around. So it seems like all roads have led us back to this technical stuff about outcomes and objectives in particular. So I'll hopefully finish that wrap video this week. And then you guys I'll send you the link when I do. So even if you're not writing a wrap, you can just get in there and see if the presentation on goals and outcomes and objectives like makes sense to you after everything we've talked about. And then it might be we have to just go deeper and start to really get professional development for people on goals, on objectives and outcomes. And even when you do this search on the internet, you'll find schools that have like outcome builders or outcome creators, where you fill in text fields like, who's this for? And then it says the student will, and then you'll put in your action verb. You know, they'll actually lead you through creation of a statement. And the real issue is, though, it's real easy to just be really content based and just stay in content land, right, without ever really making a clear connection out to the district mission and the ILOs. Because, you know, what you're going to teach a swimming class, well, what are students going to learn? Well, they're going to learn the backstroke. Okay, so our objective is the student will learn the backstroke. Okay, well, what's our outcome? Well, the outcome will be our student will swim the backstroke for 10 yards. And okay, that's a measurable thing, and I get that, and that kind of, you know, operationalizes the objective. But in the bigger scheme of things, why do we have the swimming class, right? Some people don't know how to swim, and we certainly don't need everybody in the world to be able to do the backstroke for 10 yards. So that can't be like the main outcome of having the course. I can see if some rich person donated a pool and we had a water polo team, there'd be some pressure, right, to use the pool for a swimming class. But if you're going to produce that and you're going to spend money from the school to hire faculty and teach that class, what do students get out of it, right? I don't really think the outcome that we're looking for is that they swim the backstroke 10 yards. I think the outcome is, well, they're learning low impact, they're getting low impact exercise, it's safe on their joints, they're getting mental well-being through constant, you know, recreational activity. You know, it's part of the PE program, right? Why do we take PE? Well, yeah, we have some athletic competition, but that's just to teach people to kind of take responsibility for their mental well-being and realize exercise, right? Regular exercise is part of that. So see, we kind of go off into the weeds, right? An outcome is I swim the backstroke for 10 yards, or is the outcome I'm taking responsibility for my health, which ties to the responsibility ILO, right? So there's this, it's not well, figured out and explained anywhere that I've seen. So it looks like that's kind of our next step. And then hopefully that leads back to the CLOs and the PLOs and the ILOs and program review and so forth. And so I'm going to talk for the first time today at 3 o'clock with Michelle Stewart, because she's the other half of this, right? She's the curriculum and the objectives, right? And so I just need to have a talk with her. Is there a way to open up a pathway? So if people want to do a lot of content objectives, and that makes sense, say in an accounting class, because we really do want their skills to be accounting, they'll be accountants, right? Maybe someday, and apply those directly. But there needs to be another path for these more broad learning objectives. I mean, what are they getting out of accounting if for whatever reason they don't get an accounting job? They're paying attention to detail, right? They're communicating with clarity and precision, right? Because the figures are precise, and the processes that they follow to yield these results, right? For an audit or something have to be correct, and people have to trust them. So isn't that though leading now to critical thinking and some other things at the institutional level that aren't just pure accounting things? Right. So I don't know if does that kind of make sense?
Yeah,
that was well said, Paul. I really like that. With the backstroke and, taking responsibility for your health, maybe persisting through that struggle, of exercising and whatnot, you're going much deeper into all of it. I like that. That was well said.
Well, good. But you guys have already heard all of it. We've talked.
Yeah,
about
no,
it
I'm just saying you
right?
should regurgitate it, Paul. Like regurgitate that to everybody. Yes. And like to everyone, just put it on a platter. Here you go. That was, that was very, that was nicely said. I really, that's, I mean, yeah, definitely. Awesome.
Okay, I'll try to work some, because see, the Academic Senate wrote this paper in 2017, and it's the curriculum reference guide. And they have countless places where they talk about outcomes and objectives together, right? Fulfilling a greater purpose. And the point is, when you write a course, you really need to know what the purpose of that course is. And you're supposed to work backwards, and you're supposed to really have the outcomes for the course defined first, right? And then work back and figure out what the objectives are. And then that should generate the course content. But I'll be honest, for the 20 years I did course outlines, I never did any of that. If I had to rewrite Math 90, I just looked at the Math 96 and the 105. How did they do that one? How did they do those? Oh, so the learning objectives are really like the super important course content. Okay, but that's not really what a learning objective is, but that's how I did it, because I didn't know what else to do, and I just wanted it to be acceptable, to curriculum, because the reality was I just needed a book, right? I was just going to teach the content and test, and the students were going to get more out of it than the math that they'd forget. But it was that experience of struggling with the instructions and doing the problems and getting help and working hard and being successful, right? Where hopefully what's going to be the outcome, and then they take that experience on and have confidence to do difficult things in the future in their lives. But what we're trying to do now is just get way more, specific and have statements about these outcomes, like the habits of mind type things. I also heard from, I think Rhonda Nishimoto was working on some kind of a task force that they're redoing Bloom's taxonomy. There's like an old version of Bloom's that's 1956, and it has a lot of knowledge, cognitive stuff in it. And now they're adding the affective domain, right, which is more habits of mind and skills, and so they're pushing that forward. And so that'll make it much easier for faculty both to create learning objectives for their course outline or record and their outcomes in this, in the way that we've been pushing in terms of these transforming lives, right? It's about habits, values, and traits, right? It's not just about how well you can use your mind. And then hopefully that just broadens the idea about intelligence, right? It's not this fixed thing that you can't do anything about, right? With effort, and if you take your time and work at it, you can, it's malleable. You can change it. You can open up pathways in your brain. Your brain changes the way it works. And so we need, students especially to know that. So what about program review? Have you guys had a chance to look at any of that? If you worked on your own or looked at the instructions, if you have any feedback or comments, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I work with Kyle and Patrick Martinez on the math. So as you mentioned, it has been submitted. So I gotta say, Paul, like I really found it very easy to navigate with the instructions that you provided, and I think the video was the thing that we were using a lot. So the three of us met, we were going through the sections, and then every time we got to a section, we're like, okay, this is what it's trying to say. Okay, let's watch the video. We follow your video. And okay, we see what we have to do on this section. Okay. Put some ideas there, talk about it, write it down. okay, what's the next section we have to complete? Okay, let's go to that section. Now let's watch that video. If we have any questions, let's watch that video again. And then I think the video is such a great tool to have there, where
Okay.
people can just click and watch you explaining what to do, and you even show the example of what it looks like at the end. So I think that's invaluable. So great job on that.
And so I'm going to jump in real quick. So to piggyback, I didn't tell Luis this, but I went in there into Illumin and I checked out all their work that they had done. And, you know, it looks nice. Everything that, you know, we had been working on and talking about, it looks like it's all there, like what you want. I did catch a typo in there, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, no, it looks great. And you know, I'm glad. I'm sure Luis was probably at the helm with just, you know, as far as leading them and you know, as far as, you know, where we're going in the direction that we're leading. You know, as far as, you know, these skill-based things. But yeah, 140, 105 was in there. I liked it, everything that was, you know, laid out in all of it. The instructions, I went over the instructions, you know, again, and it seemed, I'm sorry, I'm looking at literally Illumin right now. And, you know, I liked it. So I'll say well done, Luis and crew that worked on it. So, but yeah, no, I liked it. It seems like everything that you would want, Paul. Maybe there's something here or there that maybe you want more of. I don't know if you've given it a gander, but yeah, no, it's nice. It's easy to follow. But yeah, so anyways.
Yeah, and like the math department said, like we're ready for that next meeting with you to continue the work.
Okay.
But I gotta say that if I was in there, so all those um, departmental learning outcomes that Adam and I talked about and went through and that we had ready, if it wasn't because I was there, Kyle and Patrick would have done something completely different and kind of like do the same thing that was done before.
Right.
when
That's
it
the
comes down.
tendency. Yeah.
So me being there and reminding them of, remember guys, we have to do something like this now. This is what the changes that we're trying to make.
Okay.
That allowed them to, okay. And then I was like, plus we have already done some work. So again, review. And they were like, oh yeah, we remember seeing those and those look good. Okay. Yeah, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's use those. But I feel like people that are doing this program review in silos, they're gonna kind of forget all that stuff and they're gonna go with like, okay, well, what did we had last time, and let's go with that again and resubmit or redo the same thing.
I know it's such a compliance thing, and we've gotten into this mode of I'm going to put this off to the last minute, then I'm just going to do it, and then it's going to be over, and I can forget about it for a year or 7 years or whatever. And it's like I'm just going to keep teaching my content, and I'm going to keep testing my students, and good luck to them. I mean, I really hope their lives turn out well, right? And now that we have guided pathways, both as a way to like try to really emphasize transportable learning. And then we have the performance-based funding, which is telling us, hey, locally, we're not going to pay you unless the students really learn. So don't just give your grades away, right? Figure out how to influence students so they do better and earn more A's, B's, and C's. But those are our incentives. And without those, we wouldn't really be even having this discussion, because we'd never really get this off the ground locally if there wasn't something statewide to drive it. But I think still people look at each other like, I still, what I know how to do is teach my content. Right. And I don't understand the rest of this stuff or how to do it. And I actually feel kind of stupid because I don't. People are using these words like outcomes and objectives. I don't really understand them. I really don't. I think there's a lot of that going on, because I know that's how I felt when I was doing curriculum, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I want to say I like the whole linkage between the CLO, PLO, ILO.
Yeah.
I really like that whole linkage that you have here in the what is that, IB.1.
Oh yeah, the 1B. Yeah. Well, and
yeah.
That,
or is that 1B? Okay, so
no,
yeah,
that
yeah, I really like that. They did a really nice job with that. Just putting it all together. And it is exactly what we wanted. So, but then again, it's not only we cheated, but I mean, you did have a primary source there, Luis, steering everybody, because it did seem like when we did get together and we did the, the faculty meeting and the training, it did seem like, they were kind of getting the gist of it, when they were writing, what is it, the CLOs and stuff like that, but they always wanted to like, insert, oh, problem solving and, to solve a problem. And they always kind of wanted to go more like specific versus like these generalized statements. And so I don't know if Luis encountered that at all, but yeah, it's like, I'm sure there's always like, oh, because math folks are just like, oh no, you have to do this, you have to do this, but it's no, it's not the content, it's the skill. So I don't know if Luis, if you had experienced that or
No,
or
I
had to
think
let them know.
yeah, I think Kyle and Patrick went on board from the new revisions with when it comes down to learning outcomes. Like I said, I think the only part that I noticed was when we were looking at the departmental learning outcomes, right? It seems like they have forgotten what we have talked about before. So they were kind of ready to jump in, do something new, or stick with the old stuff, right? They were like, well, maybe we can just keep it. I was like, no, remember that we already kind of tried to link those to the habits of mind and all that stuff. So we already did that work, and then it shows. And then I showed them again, and they were like, "Oh yeah, these are awesome. Yeah, let's use them." So if it wasn't because I was there, I'm pretty sure they would have done something completely different, or taking the easy way out and just reuse the old stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, Michelle, you had pushed that in the beginning last fall about the PLO. We got to have the ILO to PLO to CLO connection. So, we built that template out so that they would connect, right? They'd build the CLO, and if they didn't have a PLO, they'd note that. So, yeah, I mean, there are people. I talked to the English people that were working on it, Crystal Bryan. I emailed with her a couple of times, and she was talking about the habits of mind and creating CLOs. And I haven't looked at their program review, but the point is, remember, the hope had been we just get something in those sections, and then I'd be able to work with the departments one-on-one, right? Starting, in the next couple months. So that'll be the next step. And then it'll be a challenge to be able to assess these, right? So we got to have some way for students to do something, right? So that it's observable and there's some kind of a rubric. And so that's not going to be easy, but but the first step is they have these new habits of mind style CLOs in their program review, right? That's huge, because without that, we can't move forward from there. So what we had hoped would happen is happening. So now the question is, and it's still February, but if we want to get back on this timeline where program review is due in November, and it needs to be, because otherwise then the RAPs aren't due in time for business services and everybody to look at that, and for people to get their funding to use in July of the following year, then we have to get program review ready soon, right? So the next iteration. So now be thinking about, okay, what does program review look like next year? I mean, do you think the next step is that we pick the next 2 courses, right, that have some kind of equity, disproportionate impact, right, and build on those? And how much flexibility do we give people? And do we just keep, going down that road where we keep taking more and more new courses and creating new outcomes for them as we work on those outcomes from this year and start to get ready to assess them? That would be the next step for what they've got in program review this year. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Quick question before we go extending into that part of the conversation. Okay. Are we still doing that whole reviewing their review to see if they're where we want them to go, and then offering them feedback like, hey, you missed the mark, or no, I thought we had talked about like a rubric. Yes. Are we still going to do that for this process to help inform them on how they're doing?
I think we probably should. And there's also another thing, I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's kind of a redo of the whole participatory governance process. And there's a restructuring and reshuffling of committees and so forth. And so that's getting shared in the different committees. And so they're going to take institutional assessment and program review and kind of put us underneath institutional planning, I think. And so in some sense that the committee I've been chairing may be like a subcommittee. And I don't really think that's going to stop us from doing the rubric. And I think the rubric's still helpful, but there is a possibility that we get affected somehow, and our charge and, our scope and everything we do might change a little bit with this restructuring. It's just too hard to, too soon to tell. But yeah, I started building that out for, I think, the original version of the template. I haven't finished it, but yeah, aren't you guys thinking too that that's still a good idea to have someone look over these using a rubric and then get feedback? I know, Luis, you are definitely for that.
Yeah.
Then I will try to draft. Let me work on that too, and I'll make a note of that. I'm trying to make these videos and trying to get these videos to keep going, but that rubric for program review is big.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. I know you mentioned English and you haven't looked at their program review, but have you heard or looked at anybody else's program review? Or Michelle, have you been able to take a gander at program review in your discipline, or hear about it, or how folks are doing?
So we are late to the game as far as filling things out. We've had plenty of discussions, but there's nothing on paper, if that makes sense.
Right. No,
Virtually
that's
on paper.
just so you guys know, like right after that November 5th, I think we only had 9 of 50 something program reviews that had anything written in that new CLO box. So no, I have not gone back to look to see. I was going to wait till the 26th, then make a pass, but really people are often late doing this, so I'm not even expecting the 26th to be, like a lot of new stuff will be there, but because the videos are in YouTube, I can go into YouTube and see how many views there are, and those aren't full views, because some of those videos are long. I don't like them being that long, but I didn't want to just break them up to make short videos, and then if people couldn't finish a section, they had to go back and they couldn't remember if it was the second or third video they needed. So in those longer videos, I didn't do it in every one, but I tried to put like a timeline, a presentation timeline down, so as a new section came up, like the time to go to if you needed to go back and review it or something. But yeah, all these program reviews are going to be public, so I'm going to pull up the English one and we can take a look just to see where they're at with it. Yeah, so they haven't written anything down for the new CLOs in here yet, or changes to their PLOs. And for these, I just expected in 1B3 and 1B4 for people just to say, hey, we just need to schedule time to work with the assessment coordinator, right? I mean, if we, and that's what I think we were all thinking. We just get them to write down CLOs, we'd be happy, right? So yeah, but what generally happens, and it started last year, was, the deadline set for February 26th, and then I go through there and create a spreadsheet and see what sections people have done and what they haven't. And then Tabitha Lawler, who works with me, helps me with Illumin and some other things. Then she starts communicating the overdue stuff to people and asks them to work on it. And so then we just kind of keep track of this spreadsheet, and I just make passes through to see when people do stuff. But the good news is there's at least enough departments that have something that, I know, let me give you an example. Let me share again.
Right. I remember Jeremy. I can't remember Jeremy. I forget his last name, but I think he does.
Yeah, he does.
Rogers, Jeremy Rogers, right?
ASL, yes.
Yeah, ASL. Okay, yeah. So I saw some of his stuff that he had shared, and I was like, oh, it looked impressive. So I don't know if.
We'll look at his next, but okay. I think I'm pretty sure political science produced something that day on the 5th. There was some of the smaller departments, they didn't need to look, try to organize a big Zoom meeting. Okay, so here's PS. So they did PS 101 and 102, and they did some stuff, right, that tied CLOs to PLOs and ILOs.
Nice.
Right, so there's some of that. Let me see if let's see if Jeremy, because I talked to Jeremy, actually. I went into his Zoom room that day on November 5th. Let's see, but when I checked afterwards, I don't think he'd actually put anything in the template yet. But yeah, he came up with his own analogy. It's like, what are students going to put in their resume, right? What are they going to know how to do, that they could sell to an employer? So that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
so he actually,
yeah, it seemed like he really got the message. So I was really impressed. I really liked it.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything yet, but he's got stuff in the works. And biology, they may not have anything in their program review yet, but they actually took the time to actually work on their PLOs and not their CLOs. So let me see if they've got anything in there yet, because Nick Reeves is usually pretty good about keeping up with stuff. No, they don't have anything yet either. This is the way most of them are going to be. That's my writing, right? Because what I did was I went through all these program reviews, right, and I loaded in these data tables, right, for their courses, so they could see the African American, Hispanic, and white success rates. And then I said, hey, why don't you start with biology 115 and 134, And I even, went as far to actually stick those courses in every program review down here, right? So they know which courses to work on.
Hey, Paul, was the idea, this is maybe off topic, but were we gonna, for those ethnicity, charts, the success rates and stuff, are we gonna include more? Was the idea to include more other than just Black, white, Hispanic in the future?
And remember, we wanted to do more
Okay.
than that when we first started this all back in last summer, right?
Okay.
And then it was a question of, and what happened was, and just this is another thing to think about, and so if you get any feedback on it, it used to always be, let me share again. It used to be that we'd supply all these tables, right? And Tabitha and I would have like 700 screenshots, and we put them all in 50 or 60, 70 program reviews. But this was the only pre-populated screenshot, right? Because the administration and institutional effectiveness kind of wants to have faculty start using the data programs, right? And that was going to be my next question when we get down here and we do more with equity. So at the very end of the program review, in fact, we do have demographic equity success, right? Demographic success data analysis for equity. And the way you get to that stuff is you go to additional links, and then you pull open the instructional data, program review data. And so what happens is there's a bunch of tabs here. And so in the second tab, you'll start to get the breakdown of the different student groups, and then that are
Right.
further disaggregated, right, by enrollment type, gender, non-major versus major, financial aid versus a non-financial aid. And then you get down here, and now you've got success for everybody. So here for the AA and art, right, you have the Filipinos are doing the best. There's not a lot of them, but then the Native Americans, the whites, the Hispanics, right, African Americans. And what you can do here is when you actually click on one of these, it actually then disaggregates further, so you can pick out the disproportionate impact, right, for the different age groups. So like for the less than 18-year-olds, maybe that's like 3 homeschooled kids or something. I mean, I don't know who that is, but it's off the charts, right? Because when I sit on this, the success rate for the less than 18-year-olds here for the African Americans is 84%, right? Where in general, it's much lower. But then you start to see, people doing worse in the 25 to 29 and the 35 to 30, right? Because the green line's lower than the overall success rate for that age group in the AA art program. So you can get to a whole lot of stuff, but if you remember, this was the kind of the compromise we reached, right? So those instructions got really long at the end of program review because I was showing them how to use the program, right? And that took like 20 minutes because, if you change pages or you don't click here, you forget to click there, you end up, your data isn't the data you think you're looking at as you move from like one page to another if you aren't careful. So there's a lot of ways to be looking at these charts, but there's not the people you want to be looking at. And so there's a lot of stuff. It's hard to find like your degrees in some of these places. And so you get into CDE, and then you have to, let's see, I got to go back to the first thing.
Yeah, I believe I remember you saying something about this. Now it's coming back. So yeah, you just couldn't disaggregate everything that you wanted into that nice sort of chart that you have right now or something like that, right?
Too. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I remember now. Okay.
But that's absolutely something to think about. And we did, like, I think it was your idea, Michelle, one of the final questions in the final section here in the program review is when you get down here a little lower, is I think there's more, is there more data you need? So where was that? Right here, yeah, additional data needs for next year's program review, right? So we could ask them, and that may help drive, right, our discussion in terms of how we do all this next year. Do we keep the template similar? Do we keep the same kind of programs available? Do we give them more? Do we ask them to do more, data? Because really there's so much data available, and once you see how to use the data program, if you don't know how to use it, it's too daunting. And that's why institutional research is tired of people saying, hey, I want this, and their response is, but it's right here. But right here means it's 2 clicks away, right? And you have to do the right 2 clicks, and most people can't do the first click, right? And so they're not getting anything. So there's that balancing act between making it too accessible, and they keep asking you for it, but then if it's not accessible really for them at all, they don't get anything. So that's another thing we want to be thinking about as we kind of lead them through program review and accessing this data. Because really what we want them to do is, it's not even time to do program review, but they're just curious about how the Native Pacific Islanders are doing, because that was a low success group for the last 3 years. I wonder how they're doing now. Well, let me click here and get an institutional research, open this program. Oh yeah, I got to click Native Islander, then I got to go to this tab, that kind of thing. And probably if there's more than 2 or 3 clicks, they're not going to remember because they won't do it often enough. But then if they feel more comfortable, I think hopefully what these instructions have done is at least shown them what's possible and how to do it. So then at least they won't be so overwhelmed, like, I'm not going to get started because I don't know the first thing. Well, maybe I can go back into Paul's program review and click on those instructions again, and I'll remember how to get to the program and how to use it. So I don't know, that's for you guys to tell me, because I get some pressure from the administration trying to make the faculty self-sufficient. Right? They should just go and know, they should know how to do it, and they should go do it. But the reality is that's not reasonable for most people, and it's not going to happen. It's not something they want to do anyway. So we got to get a balance in there somehow.
So 2 things. One, out of clarification with what you were just showing us, I thought we had asked them to give us the sample size, the number of cases as well, in addition to the percentage.
I think
so when we're looking at that data, I see percentages, but I don't see it say like 4 students or 2 students.
Right. We did ask for that.
Little pop-up part. And so I think, to me, that is still a critical piece of information when we're trying to figure out what our disparity is, like what it looks like in terms of humans.
Yes.
And to your other point that you just made, and this is coming from my own experience between fall, the intersession break, the winter break, and now, with the whole click thing, I 100% agree. And I do think that there's an additional layer of discouragement for those who are trying to operate it with a genuine try, because they keep changing the presentation of the data.
Okay.
And where it is. And I was just having this conversation with Pam because I was looking up some data for department chair stuff for scheduling. And I said, I could have swore it was on, this is arbitrary information, but I was like, I could have swore it was on page 5 of the 9 pages. And then I said, but then I went back in and it was on page 7, and it took me, an extra 45 minutes to find it. And she's like, I know that keeps frustrating me because they keep changing it as well. So I understand there's some ebb and flow there. We're requesting certain data, therefore changes will happen, but then also changes are happening and you can't find what was originally being asked or required to be used. So your videos have become very helpful, but in general, when we're talking about people who are already finding this daunting, intimidated, or we'll just say scarred and resistant,
right.
When we change where the data is, that can be really, really challenging to navigate when you go in there one day and then a couple weeks later, you're looking at it on a different page. So
yep.
I'm not sure there's a resolution for what I'm sharing. I just feel like it's important context that, people are giving it a good faith try and then finding themselves discouraged because they went one place one time and then it's in another place another time in general.
No, yes.
So there's that, but I would love if you could just plug again that number so that, like with whoever that we would need to talk to, like, hey, is it possible when we hover over these bars in the charts or these line graphs, can we get that numerical count to pair with the percentage? Because like you said, when we were looking at that data right there, 84.5% for less than 18, that's great.
Yeah, right.
But how many? Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 5? And what does that look like? Because that might not be so great when we compare it to the 35 to 39-year-old group. And it turns out, that there's less of one or more of one group. So I think that's critical.
Yep.
And then the point of like focusing on other groups, I'm glad they gave us that data showing us veteran, former foster youth and all that, because that really adds the context. I also think that's helpful because even though we're prioritizing Hispanic and Black, the first thing I noticed when we had our conversation back in, I want to say it was summer, gosh, it was so long ago.
Yep.
When they had said, no, we're only going to focus on Black and Hispanic for program review, the very first thing I noticed in psychology was some of our disparities actually disappeared because we didn't have them for those groups,
right.
which could lead us in a not so great way to say we don't have anything to work on, you know. But in reality, this data can at least help us, you know, if we don't have something with Hispanic or African American disparities, we can at least look at something else. Okay, so I see number counts there, but when you
Yes,
have
and that,
the other charts,
you're
with
right. I don't think we get them as soon as we go to the success chart.
yeah,
So
so that's where we really need it, the comprehensive look
Yes.
of what all that looks like.
Yes, tab 3. You're absolutely right. I didn't know that wasn't in here, and I'm assuming that that's a relatively easy thing for them to provide anywhere in here. So I will make a note. Yeah, and so yeah, and if you see any other places or you see additional stuff that you need, I mean, ideally, in fact, if you can make sure that's in the psych program review. I don't know if you've signed up. Are you signed up for psych to do the program review, Michelle?
I am, yeah, usually on.
You sound so excited about it too, yeah. and so totally. But if you can put in that box of what data do we need next year, right? We need number counts for. I've got it written down, and I'll have it in my own notes. But yes, any place where you see in any of this data that we just need more specificity, because now that we're actually being able to hover and click, because it used to be these would just be screenshots, so they were just static, you know, graphics in the program review. You couldn't do anything with them. So I think in this case it's a much bigger improvement. But the trade-off is now I have to know how to use the program, right? And so and again, I think ultimately we want people to be able to use the program, and maybe, you know, I don't know, the YouTube videos are always there whether you're doing program review or not, right? And so it might take you a while to remember what section it was, you know, if you just went to the program review videos a month from now and tried to just learn how to use the data program again. So it's not the best presentation, but the information's there. Anyway, just stuff to think about, because I think we'll want to bring something back to I guess technically we're now, Adam, you're leaving the Senate right after this semester?
So
Are you running or?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I want to run again.
Right.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It's kind of up in the air.
What we all say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, then again, it's never guaranteed if you get reelected. So that I don't know. We'll see. It's something that's on my mind. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of like in limbo right now.
Yeah, and it's absolutely a Senate thing, and I want to respect that and the composition of, you know, who they put on here. But it'd be great with your guys' experience just for you to kind of still be part of this, and we could definitely schedule a meeting so that people could come. I mean, we're not trying to exclude people, and the more people with experience and ideas and everything that we can get, I think the better this whole thing will be. I you know, for years I just tried to do it myself, and you know, that's just, you can't do it in a vacuum. There's just way too much stuff you don't think of. You know, you need input from other people.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind contributing still and being a part of this, you know, as long as it need be. This is fun and enjoyable. So
yeah, it's great to have all of you here, and hopefully we'll just keep going. And I don't know how the Senate will feel, and maybe we have a new leadership, because, you know, that may change things. It'd be great just to maybe, I think the academic Senate, you know, has such a big role in this that it would be great to keep something like this going. So hopefully that's what they'll decide to do. Well, any other thoughts or any other things you've heard or want to share about any of this stuff?
I think, Paul, like when we were going through the section of the rubric for evaluating the CLOs or new CLOs, I think that's the part where I think a lot of people are going to put like, we'll meet with you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a hard time trying to even get started. So I guess I'm kind of saying it more like a warning, watch out, because everybody's going to say, I'm going to meet with Paul, or we're going to meet with Paul to go over the rubric. Because I think that's where a lot of people are going to stop and they're like, oh, we don't know how to get started. So we're just going to meet with Paul to have ideas.
And I kind of need to that. There's probably a lot of department specific stuff that's going to come up here. And it would be great if we could make videos that just work for everybody. Here's how you make a rubric, no matter whether you're in psychology or English or math. And the reality is there are some things we want to focus on. 4-scale rubrics are generally the best way to get started. And if you can build a 4-scale rubric where like a 4 is like awesome and very few people get it, and a 3 is where you expect everybody, and most, hopefully most people get that. But then you have a 2 score where, they're not quite getting a 3. And this is where we need to, the 2 out of 4 really needs to be the place where, okay, we've got too many 2s. How do we get them to become 3s and 4s? And why are we getting this many 2s, right? Kind of thing. And if you go to 5 scale or more, you have an issue trying to really tell the difference between a 3 and a 4, or a 4 and a 5, right? And if you do anything smaller than a 3 scale, a 3 scale, if you just have a whole bunch of 2s and that's what you want, but some of your 2s are on the low side, right? But you haven't differentiated between your high 2s and your low 2s by making a 4, 3, 2, 1, right? And doing that between your 3s and your 2s, if that makes sense. Yeah, we really all want to use 4 scale rubrics, and there might be exceptions, but for the most part, we do have people using 2 scale rubrics out there, which are just yes or no, right? And it's either a yes, everything's great, or it's a no, everything's terrible. And we don't know what to do with the no's. I mean, we just know it just didn't do it, but we haven't differentiated that kind of mid-range performance out to figure out really what they know from what they don't know. We just know that there's something that they failed at the assessment. We don't even know what it is. So it's that kind of stuff. I mean, so I think we can all start with 4 scale rubrics, but beyond that, how we define those scores, how we make sure that we don't confuse 2s and 3s, all those things. There's going to be a lot of iterative stuff that happens. So I probably have to have that discussion with like just department by department. Yeah, because I think, in fact, I was just looking at the psychology ones, Michelle, and I think you're using a 4 scale rubric in psychology where 4 is great, 3 is fantastic, 2 is okay, and 1 needs improvement. And so, and I think we need to probably flip that around where the 3 is great, the 2 isn't good enough, and the 1's really bad, right? So we can separate out that low level or mid range and really kind of have a sense of how many students are there. Because so the 4 scale is working, but I think that the way that the scores are individually working needs to be looked at probably. But I know Richard has ideas about this stuff, and he was like a former assessment coordinator for Menifee, years ago. So that's a tough one to kind of make inroads there.
One step at a time.
Yeah, and the little Levi steps is what they are. They're little baby steps. Is what we got going there. So
That's so true.
yeah, I mean, but as long as we can keep walking, even if it's little steps, that's a lot better than people just have shut the door and said, nope, not doing it. And again, I think guided pathways and performance-based funding tell us from the state level that's not an acceptable answer, right? Everybody's going to do something, right? We're going to work on this, and we're going to make progress even if it's slow.
So Paul, I know you have a ton of work ahead of you because program review, and then meeting with folks in departments and stuff, with their CLOs, PLOs, linking up and having that nice connection. From there, is it once you get that out of the way, I know it's going to take a lot of time. Are we moving on to assessments, like how do we assess that, and in conjunction with the rubrics? Is that is that like sort of what's next? Yep. In addition to the wraps and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I think for what I still see is making those transforming lives videos and doing exactly what you said. In other words, kind of recapping the attributes of the CLOs and then looking at learning experiences and rubrics. And then there's also going to be some kind of video series for objectives and outcomes, like we talked about at the beginning of today, because that's just so fundamental to so many things and people don't really get that. So then I think looking forward, maybe next year's program review could have a section that feeds back to this year's. So in other words, you looked at 2 courses, right? You came up with CLOs. If you haven't created those assessment tools or rubrics, let's work on those for those 2 courses that we worked on last year making CLOs for. Let's work on the assessment tools and rubrics, and here's the Transforming Lives videos, right, to help you with that. And then there could be the new section for next year, which is here are the next 2 courses or the next 3 courses, and let's look at your course equity data piece again, right? Where's the next layer of disproportionate impact, right? Or we need some way. So maybe we start with next year's program review. The first part might be a follow-up to this year's, and then doing the same thing next year for new courses that we did this year. I don't know, it's just something to think about, but that's what I need from you guys, is what you're thinking in terms of what this could look like. And then we can propose that to the Senate, and then kind of get that up and running like over the summer so that people can come back in the fall. And ideally, and this is huge, and I think we're not making any progress on this, but this whole idea of a 16-week schedule. If we can't get to a place where we have a week before fall to like meet and be together and do all this stuff, right? It would feel so good to have that done and then teach for a semester. But if we're trying to do all this work during, September and October for program review and curriculum catalog deadline and joint hiring, it's just, people are going to go nuts. It's just too much to do. But I don't think we're any closer to 16 weeks than we were a year ago. I think this pandemic thing put that on hold. I don't know that though.
I haven't heard anything specific, but when I was working on the 16-week work group, when we were proposing calendars,
Yes.
It went straight to a point where, because I was asking, hey, do we want to get any more faculty input? And they had said, no, administration had felt like the opportunities had already been presented for that.
Okay.
And they were moving forward for a 22-23 launch with the last
That's right.
schedule. So
Yeah.
unless there's been some public pause to that at all, and you're in more constituent groups than I am, so listen out for it, but I'm under the impression it's still happening, and
Okay,
nobody
good.
isn't.
No, you're right.
So,
I mean, I'm on that group with you, and I had just forgotten. Since I hadn't heard anything, I thought it had somehow got sucked in with all the it's a pandemic, that's on hold kind of stuff. But no one specifically said that. I don't know. But to me, that's going to be a crucial piece, because as we do more and more of this work and it becomes more labor intensive and needs more input and more people together, if we can't get like program review ready in the summer and then have people do it like in late August and then it's done and then we teach. Right? Because if we try to do this during the semester, it's always going to get pushed to the back burner. Oh, I'm in a silo. I signed up for representative duty, blah, blah, blah. I have to do this now. I don't have time to work with anybody or get their input. Then it just is back in compliance mode. And no matter how good of a template we design, no matter how good the data and the instructions, people aren't going to do it.
Yeah. So I definitely support the reflective process of year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3.
Okay.
The initial question that comes up for me, Paul, with that is, so I'm going to use psych just because it's tangible and easy for me to focus on. Our 2 classes that were picked because of the greatest service to students in terms of numbers as well as disparity is Psych 101 and 103. And so, and I don't know if this works for all of them, but if those are the ones that we're rewriting this year, right, and we're putting that together and then we're launching that, have we aligned the assessment process with that? Meaning that because right now our rotation for psychology, we kind of arbitrarily picked which ones we weren't assessing all courses all at the same time, right? But if our department is redrafting those now, are those going to be the ones that are launched so we can collect data so there can be a reflective process from the data we originally had before anything was rewritten and the new data that comes in after rewriting, right? So if there isn't any data, there may not be an opportunity to reflect back, like, did you improve? Was there any change in disparity? Did you get rid of disparity, right, with these newly written CLOs? So what I'm wondering is, I honestly am so delirious from all the conversations we've had and then having a baby in there and all that, like, did we have those conversations about making sure that stuff was aligned? Like, if we tell them they're going to work on these 2 classes, you are also now going to assess those 2 classes in fall and spring to get data that can be then compared back.
The time frame, and I didn't really know when we were first talking about this last semester how long it would really take. They got, let's say you have your CLOs and they're in this year's program review, but you have nothing for an assessment tool or a rubric, right? Then you have to build that next. So that would be what I'd focus on us. I would ask us through the program review to put into program review that they would then be responsible next year for making that happen, right? Because without the assessment tool and the rubric, we can't even collect data, right?
Yeah.
So then we have to get those 2 things done. So I mean, it might be if for the speedier programs, then I can work with them this spring and this summer, and they might have something in place then to start in the fall, but that'd be the quickest we'd go. Then next fall, when they get their program review, template right in Illumin, and then say, remember, you did Psych 101 and 103 or whatever. Do you have an assessment tool? Oh, we don't. Okay, well then we got to get that right now, right? That has to be done this year, because if we don't get it done this year, and let's assume we do get it done this year, then it'll be the year after that we first, right, assess it. So we're out at least a year from right now of really probably getting data from most people. So it probably is that we have to include in next year's program review. You've got CLOs from last year for your 2 classes. Now you need to get assessment tools and rubrics done this year. And then once those are in place, then no matter what your assessment schedule says, we're assessing those courses, right, the following year. That's the way I see it. And I think that's as fast as we can probably go.
Okay, so let me see if I can regurgitate that. Basically, they're rewriting them now. They're due in February for this spring process. So the earliest would be the next spring that they would
Probably.
be assessed. But then that would put us right back into year 2.
I know. Yeah.
So we wouldn't really have data for reflective processes until year 3 for the very first 2 classes that were rewritten. Is that?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I think there's that much of a lag, and I don't know if we can really shorten that. I mean, departments that want to work faster can, but that
Okay.
assessment tool piece, what do you get students to do? Because we're so used to giving them final exams and quizzes, right, as if we were
Right.
grading them, that we have to get into portfolios or reflections. We have to do something where the students now in this the affective domain in this habits of mind place, it's not cognitive, it's not as explicit. It's more like implicit knowledge that they have to be aware that we're asking for, and they have to be able to communicate that to us. So that's going to be a big jump.
So that's the first, because to me, that is like kind of what we want them to reflect on. And if we don't have that piece of the puzzle, then I would be asking this group, what else would we want them to reflect on that connects year 1 to year 2 if they don't have any data to compare to basically a pre-post format?
We're almost like, I just got an email from an English person saying, where's the SIP? Where's the course improvement plan? I don't see it, because they're so used to, here's the data from last semester. Okay, now I got to write a SIP, right? It's like, we're not writing SIPs because our data's not been the data we need, right? We're really in that mode of let's generate CLOs that give us good data someday, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have any real data to say anything positive or negative about, because really we've just been churning out numbers and going through the motions and being compliant. So we're almost taking a hiatus, a break from actually the data analysis by just focusing on getting the outcome statements that generate good data.
So it almost seems like there's a natural evolution of how things are assessed too, based on priority, which I think could be really helpful. Because I know, again, for psychology, when we had originally went, basically for Adam and Luis, psychology had it to where we were like assessing way too many classes in one semester, and it was very overwhelming. And we thought there's got to be a way that we can change this. So we worked with Paul to say, okay, we're going to do these 2 or 3 this semester, these 2 or 3 the next semester, instead of 5 or 6 in each semester, because they were coming up with too many classes. But with what we've created here, by telling them what the priority is, to me, that naturally evolves into, now this is the order in which you assess them. And it also puts it in bite-sized chunks, right? So that also makes me wonder, with the emails that are going out for what we're assessing, do we really need to be assessing those classes right now? Or should there be a pause on assessment in order to calibrate to when we're rewriting these CLOs?
And we really can't pause just for the compliance thing, right? Because we kind of paused during the pandemic, during that spring 20, and it's like, no, we got to keep, because people couldn't even get into Illumin. They've forgotten their passwords. We were in single sign-on for everything else. I mean, I had 50 emails. I can't get into Illumin. I can't get into Illumin. It's like, okay, and they did. They finally worked it out, most of them. But again, we have to generate this data, even though it's not helpful, right? Just to stay in compliance mode and to make sure people are in the process. And then hopefully 4, 5, 6 years out, we're starting to generate good data. And now we're on a regular schedule that kind of breaks things into manageable pieces. And now that we've looked at your equity issues, now what about the order in which your classes are taken? Should we do 101 and then we should do 102 because they take that next? And all those factors should be brought into play. But right now, it's really about staying compliant by going through the motions, but trying to generate those outcome statements that hopefully someday yield the better data.
Okay, so good data is on the horizon. The soonest it would be is spring of 22.
Probably.
Right. For assessment in fall of 22, ideally, because we'd be back on the fall schedule. So then maybe that's kind of like how we write out or strategize for folk. what that looks like when we prioritize the classes they should be working on in their program review. And then that way, by the time we get to year 5 and 6, we do have manageable schedules, like cyclical schedules that are working for each department based on the number of classes they have.
It'll just naturally lead to the assessment schedule. Yeah, based on the priority, the need of which classes, need better CLOs sooner than others.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that all makes sense. So maybe that'll help feed into the template. And then we're already talking about what the template would look like. And maybe it does need to be first, hey, here's the equity piece for next year. Here are your next 2 classes. Now, next piece. Remember last year you did these 2 classes? Okay, what are your assessment tools and rubrics looking like?
Yeah.
Right, just update us on the progress. Where are they done? Are they ready to go? Have you not started them? Because we need to get them done for that. We'd like to start in spring 22 and no later than fall 22. So you've got a year to get this whole thing built out. So you've got your CLOs, you got your assessment tools, the work that students do, you got your rubrics. Now you're in Illumin, right? You're having students do stuff. Now we're getting numbers that hopefully then we can go back to the SIP, right? The course improvement plan type stuff. Okay, what'd you learn from those numbers? What needs to be improved? What do you need to write a RAP for that's more expensive than your department can afford, right? And then this whole continuous improvement thing, starting with assessment and then going through data analysis, then into program review and prioritizing all your needs, and then RAPs, right, to get the money you need. Then it all starts to make sense, but it only makes sense if that assessment piece gives you the data to start with. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions to stay accredited.
No, I like that idea, Michelle. I think putting it into the program review and kind of giving them those dates or time expectations, I think that's going to make a lot more sense versus just like, we're doing it. But if you have now an idea of when you're supposed to assess the first time, then that's going to let faculty know that, okay, like this is when we're going to first introduce it. And that means that if we haven't developed those rubrics, we need to get working on those, or at least for them to keep that in mind, that there's some specific time where we want to get started with the assessment of the first set of classes. So I like that to be incorporated, having those years or those semesters in the program review, so that people have an idea what's coming up next.
And maybe like some sort of visual snapshot of that, by maybe the columns represent the academic years. And we color coded it to the cycle too. So like the first 3 columns would be, 2021, 21, 22, and 22, 23. And it shows like your, focus on these classes. Rubrics are done by this academic year, so it's assessed in this semester. Then your next set of classes, and then those are assessed here. And by the time we get to that, now we're into, the 23, 26, right? And so that would be color coded at the top, and those 3 columns would show, now we're doing CIPs and for these 2 classes, and you're focusing on rubric for that. I apologize, emergency going by.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So there was one section in the program review where they built a schedule, right, for guided pathways. And you had to figure out when your courses needed to be offered by the pathways they were in and so forth. And then I could actually build my own schedule in that earlier section that lays it out like you said, right? I don't know how colorful Illumin will let me get, but I can definitely explain it. And I could include in the instructions, the video instructions, even if Illumin wouldn't let me get colorful, I could do what you're talking about. And just show them the calendar, built out further than what they need to know right now. But that's our overall view and where we're headed and what this looks like. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, Paul, you cannot get away now with not putting a video for everything. I'm sorry.
Well, and it made sense because I am a faculty member, but I'm not teaching. But I knew all you guys were having to do this. So I'm like, if they're having to do this and they're my brothers and sisters, I'll get serious with the videos too, because we should all be in this pain together.
When you retire, you're going to have to do a Matrix themed retirement video.
I may have to do that. Yeah,
I've chosen to take this pill.
Teresa can be Trinity, and we'll just, I don't know, we're gonna die. It's kind of sad, but yeah, there you go.
Hey, Matrix 4 is coming out, so I don't know what that's gonna be about.
Is it seriously?
Is that a real thing?
Oh yeah, it's a real thing.
Wow, because it's been 20 years. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. No, and Dell Helms has been saying that you got to keep the matrix tied into this stuff and these objectives and outcomes somehow. And if you remember, I mean, like when I went to the theater to see Matrix 2, I went there like maybe the second week. We were the only people in the theater because, you know, everyone wanted more Matrix one. It's good guys and bad guys and all this fighting and special effects. But then they got super philosophical and, you know, got built into choice and all these really interesting ideas. But it left most of their fans kind of like, that's not what I signed up for. So I don't want that to happen, but yeah, there you go. Cool. Hey, well, it's good to see everybody, and we'll plan to meet back in a couple weeks. I don't know if there's anything you really need to do. I'll just try to start getting working on this stuff and keeping you up to date. I'll send you that wrap video for the instructions for the goals and objectives, the goals and outcomes, and you can kind of critique that, and we can kind of figure out what professional development needs to look like, especially for faculty when you do learning objectives for the course outline of record and learning outcomes, the CLOs for Illumin and the whole CLO, PLO, ILO alignment thing. So
Sounds good, Paul.
okay,
Thank you
sounds
for
good. It's good to
everything.
see you guys.
All right, likewise.
see ya.
Take care,
All right,
everyone.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.